Couples therapists, do you ever tell anyone, alright you two just shouldn't be together, and how long does it take you to reach that conclusion? Therapist who sees couples, I never tell them something isn't going to work, but I ask the hard questions at appropriate times. Do you want this to work? What needs to change to have the kind of relationship you want to be in? Are you willing to make changes or compromise on some things for the sake of the relationship? I've had clients who were obviously heading towards breakup do it during a session. I've told clients when their behavior was abusive. I've had clients who literally would not stop fighting during the session long enough for me to make it through an exercise that illustrates how different perspectives on the same thing doesn't make the other person wrong or a liar. I've had clients that would cancel their session multiple times a month because they had broken up but then reschedule when they were back together within 72 hours. Basically, the whole premise of therapy is not to tell people what's wrong with them or what they should do, but to help them figure it out on their own. It depends on the situation, but I generally do not tell people to split. I explore the relationship and see if this is the kind of relationship the client likes or wants. We'll then compare and contrast the two relationship types and explore how to either 1. Make the relationship fit or 2. Change relationships. The reason it depends: abusive relationships, they tend to require a different approach. You can't sit and watch your client being beaten while you process through positive and negative relationships. You have to be a little more proactive when safety is involved. For me, generally this is a bad relationship you don't need comes after the client identifies the relationship isn't one they need. It's used as a confirmation instead of a demand. I honestly couldn't imagine being a therapist. The amount of mental fortitude you have is beyond commendable. Not a therapist here, but training to be one. My professor was a couples therapist for 25 years. She said on the first session she would take each person in her office separately and ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to work on this relationship and stay together? She said that she could construct a treatment plan based on where the numbers were relative to each other. So her plan would look different if a couple answered like 8 and 9 than if they looked like 1 and 2. She said the saddest were when it was like 1 and 10 because then it was more about helping that person who was a 10 slowly accept that things weren't going to work out. It's gotta be heartbreaking to the one that's a 10 to find out that the other person has pretty much already decided they are done. Trained as a therapist. In the majority of therapeutic orientations, the goal is to help the clients understand their lives better and give more positive options. One awesome case study I found, of a married couple who had a child, had the phrase, "I'm not here to save your marriage, I'm here to save your relationship so your child can be cared for." Nearly always, if positive behavior is shown, the client will either try to move towards that situation, or they won't, and you'll uncover more of the underlying problem. If you find enough of the problem, you get to a solution point or a separation point. Unless there are serious issues, like physical abuse, then the steps are entirely different. TLDR. Most therapists don't say break up, they say this is what a good relationship looks like, and the client usually figures out fast whether they can get there or not. Unless abuse, then different advice happens. At the first session, I explained to both partners the goal of therapy is not to keep them together. The goal is to help them improve how they communicate with each other to resolve conflict and/or differences. No guarantee of the outcome. If they decide to end the relationship, at least they can be civil about it and communicate respectfully, honestly, and in ways they feel good about themselves. When I have been directly asked my opinion about a couple staying together, I usually ask if the one person can 1. Imagine their future without the other, and 2. Look past and/or accept the fill in the blank, because the relationship is worth it or the person has more positive qualities. I have talked to individual clients about why they should end their relationship, especially if it is abusive or toxic, but usually I try to help the individual look at pros cons of staying and identify consequences for choices. As a therapist, I know it's common for one or both people to go to therapy to check a box. You know, the I did everything I could box. If that is the did attitude that you have, your chances for success are slimmer, though not impossible. I don't tell anyone they shouldn't be together. I do point out that their actions or attitudes might not demonstrate that the relationship is very important to them. The only time I recommend seriously that people not be together is in the case of abuse. The first priority them is to protect the victim. A good therapist is only directive when there's no other option. Therapy is all about autonomy and self-knowledge. Couples therapy is less about fixing you giving up a relationship, and more about making the couple think, by themselves, about what can and has to be done, be it fix, be it part ways, and make their decision from a position of knowledge and respect, for themselves and for each other. I once read something about how a therapist can tell if a couple is going to work out based on positive affirmation. Not sure if that is the right term, but it was basically if one person points out something they're interested in, excited about, a good partner acknowledges that with positivity, even if they don't really care, while a bad partner doesn't. This is really interesting to me. I had an ex that always put my interests down, like I was a joke. It used to anger me so much, and I'd even tell him it bothered me, to which he'd reply that I shouldn't be taking him so seriously. To him, he was simply giving me a hard time. Not a therapist, but when I was married, we tried marriage counseling. My ex didn't like what any of the therapists were saying because it wasn't what she wanted to hear. I was also the one setting these appointments up and trying to make it work. The third one we saw suggested maybe just a one-on-one session with each of us after the initial session. I agreed, but again my ex didn't like what she was hearing and declined. I went for that one-on-one session a few weeks later and it lasted 5 minutes. I told her I knew we were done and she agreed but wanted to make sure I was okay. While I wasn't, I assured her I was and left. A good therapist will tell you what's up, and I'm appreciative to this day that she was looking out for me even though I already knew. My stepmom is wildly insecure and it's absolutely never her fault. Ever. She is never wrong. Never. If it's her fault, it ain't. So she refuses to go to counseling, while my dad goes in and almost cries some weeks. When my ex-wife and I were divorcing, I managed to get one court-mandated counseling session. Because I wanted to try to work on my relationship with my kids, I did the leaving, and there was a bit of Stockholm stuff going on with the kids. I suppose it was almost sneaky of me, but I was the voice of calmness and reason. Or is it just what reasonable people do? And my ex just did her usual psycho thing. The most interesting thing of all was the therapist's face. He looked pretty incredulous at times. I can't remember if he actually asked if we were trying to patch things up. He wasn't super partisan or anything, but he pointed out a few things that were favorable to me. She did not like that one bit. Oh, I didn't think much of him afterwards. It was kind of vindicating. It would be wrong to tell them that. I've certainly worked with people through the process of them coming to that conclusion though, and it doesn't take a long time if that's true. Couples therapist. Can't tell them they shouldn't be together, but I have had couples yell at each other in session non-stop a couple of times, cutting me off when I tried to talk and tried to interrupt their yelling. After about 5 minutes of just sitting there listening to them calling each other names and cursing and accusing, I stood up while they were yelling at each other and said, "Hey, can't do this in here. You can do that at home, but you can't yell like that in my office. Are you willing to stop yelling and have a real conversation now?" The answer was yes, and they sat down, but immediately started blaming the other person and yelling at each other again. I stood up, opened the door and said, "You have to leave. This isn't counseling. This isn't helping and you have to leave now." They did. On their way out I told them to call me if they wanted to try again. They didn't. I don't know if they stayed together or not in both cases. One of my professors had a couple for whom he just directed you talk and you listened, then switched after a while. They thought it was brilliant. That's literally all he did. A friend of mine just went into business as a couples counselor. If the couple splits despite her efforts, she considers it a personal failure. I hope she gets over that so she doesn't have to be upset. Sounds like she needs counseling. As a couples therapist, I can never make that judgment for you. If you want to work on it, I'll help you, and if you decide you don't want to work on it, I'll help you arm tools to effectively communicate and support each other through the breakup. One of my friends caught his wife cheating. I knew before they got married that she was going to cheat on him. If she wasn't already, she'd been doing it through well over half of their 7-year marriage, but like a champ he got her to agree to go to couples therapy. After 2 sessions he told my friend to cut his losses. She wasn't going to do anything to try to fix it, and guaranteed him that she was still cheating with the guy, and wasn't going to stop. He moved on and got remarried to a great girl. The decisions about relationships ought to be made by therapists. People come to therapists for counseling, not judgment. People come to therapists for counseling, not judgment. I don't know. I think a lot of people go to therapists looking for judgment. As in, your husband/wife isn't he and you are right about everything and she should do exactly what you say, and are disappointed when they get counseling instead. For me, I will tell the couple that I'll fight for their relationship as long as they want me to. A lot of time people will come into therapy as a last-ditch effort to save the relationship, and once the therapist starts asking the hard questions they were too afraid to ask themselves, they'll realize they are better off breaking up. Most depressing thing I ever heard from my friend who is a couples therapist is that the relationships hardly ever work out because it's usually too late by the time they are seeking therapy. Of course, that doesn't make the therapy useless. There's been a few comments on here about how the therapy isn't there to get the patients back together. It's there to help them learn more about their relationship, to the point where they can A, make a decision about it, and B, have the difficult conversation mediated so that emotions don't run too high and someone starts shouting. Not a counselor, but attended one couple's session. From the look on her face, about 10 minutes, after half an hour she did one-on-one with each of us. Her first. When it was my time she straight up said that having more sessions would be a waste of money, and she's not going to give any ground or work with you. Looks like you found the brutally honest counselor. Not a therapist, but have been told. Did a few sessions with my ex-husband. She then said it usually helps to spend some sessions individually and she'd like to see me first. I sat down. She looked at me and I'll never forget her words. Run. Now, then she explained why. Best decision I ever made. Kind of related. I know a woman who was told by her couples therapist that this woman deserved to be raped and beaten by her husband. That therapist was also a woman. From what I understand, it was court-mandated therapy before they would hear her divorce case. She reported the therapist and is now happily married to somebody else. Not personally, but I did have a professor tell a story of doing this in a single session. Basically, when he was working as a couples therapist, he had one couple who came in for their very first session and the wife immediately starts going off on him. She tells the therapist that the relationship is never going to work. She wants to break up, and the only reason she was there was because her husband insisted. The husband, meanwhile, sits there quietly for 30 minutes while the wife explains all the reasons she can't stand him anymore. Eventually the therapist leans back and says something to the effect of, "You're right. If you don't want to be in the relationship, there's nothing I can do. Nor do I think I should try to talk you out of it. If you don't want therapy, maybe you would be better off apart." Apparently she looked incredulous and they got up and left. The ridiculous part is that she apparently called the therapist about a half hour after that screaming, saying what a bad therapist he was and how they were going to prove him wrong and make things work. Apparently all she needed to want to make an effort was to be told she couldn't do it. People are funny sometimes. People are funny sometimes. Funny, stupid, it's all semantics really. Not a therapist, but related. My ex-wife insisted we go to counseling. To prove it wasn't just her, after years of torment, anguish, freaking etc., the therapist asked a few pointed questions. I answered all of them. The ex-wife avoided them. Barely minutes into the dang session, the therapist she hired looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You're the problem." This sounds like something that actually happened. Do you verify that each person is telling the truth? No offense, but I have doubts that even experienced professional therapists can usually tell when somebody is lying. And I've known couples where each person claimed he or she was 100% innocent and the other person was 100% evil. Mind-bending emotionally abusive husband took me to just one more therapist after I told him all the first two did was show me that I was done. So we met the third therapist and my husband went on this super long ranty tirade about everything under the sun. The therapist looked at me as it was my turn to speak. I said, I'm just here to get someone other than myself to convince him that I'm done. He will be getting served divorce papers on Monday. Therapist looked at my husband and said, she is divorcing you. I think my job here is done now. And that was it. My friend went in couples therapy for some girl he was dating. Not engaged or married. She sucked. Anyway, she wrapped her tentacles in deep. She wanted him to sign over his car so she could trust him, a goddamn Ferrari. She installed a tracker app on his phone. What were you doing at Joe's Tavern at 9 PM? You said you were home at 8:30 and put a listening device in his house. She got those tentacles in deep. Luckily, they've been officially broken up for a while, and I'm certain they won't be getting back together. I don't know what a therapist would make of those classy moves. Therapist here. You provided a couple with what we call psychoeducation. You inform them that the therapy outcome can be either you decide to work through the problems and those feelings attached to them or works towards resolving a separation. If children are involved in a decision to separate, then we work towards creating goals that would ensure a healthy co-parenting relationship. I have been a therapist for 7 years, never told a couple they were no good for each other. I thought about it but never did. A prudent therapist knows that patients have self-determination, which means have the capacity to make their own choices and have the skills to work through them while facilitating the process. I remember a therapist in the first session telling my ex and I that she thought my husband wanted to break up but was afraid to tell me because he didn't want to hurt me. When we were walking out, my ex said to me it wasn't true. I said she was probably waiting for you to say that and there, but you didn't. That's when I knew it was over. I would give the advice to find a crisis counselor who is better trained than me. One of the reasons I'm not a practicing therapist is because I did not do well with abusive relationships, so I needed to do something different. The hotline or 800-799-7233 is a much better resource than I am, or Reddit. My couples counselor turned to my husband and said, you better say sorry a lot. She then turned to me and said, you either forgive him or leave. Amazingly short. There was a similar thread a while back where the couple had started to visit a therapist. They weren't seeing eye to eye and would constantly berate and battle each other. During the sessions, the therapist started blaming the woman for the couple's issues. The guy got offensive and sided with his partner and would empathize and support her as the therapist would attack her for their shortcomings. They quit the sessions in response, but the relationship had become healthier. In retrospect, he wasn't sure if this part of the therapist's brilliant plan all along. I once went to couples therapy with my then boyfriend. The therapist told us that we should break up. We didn't break up at the time, but it turned me off to seeking couples therapy for a long time. As someone who wants to be a therapist one day, thanks for asking this question. All of the advice and methodology discussion has been amazingly helpful, as I haven't had any idea where to start. I'm glad you tell the abuser their behavior is abusive. My ex was so stubborn and could not believe he was doing anything wrong. After 5 years he agreed to couples therapy. About 10 sessions in, he gets heated and demands the therapist decide who and then was at fault by percentages. Demands it. The therapist refuses. He demands again, threatens to leave if the therapist will not tell the truth that I am 100% to blame for our relationship. Therapist yells, fine. You are 99% to blame, not her. She loves you and is trying to save a marriage with you, and that gives her very little chance of success. Showstopper. He sat down stunned and silent. I felt vindicated, affirmed, and knew I did not deserve this relationship and pain. I got enough courage to leave soon after. Sometimes bullies need to hear it. I couldn't get my husband to even go to a therapist. My own therapist told me that was my answer. She was the first person in years who said to me, what if you put you first? That concept left me speechless. Ironically, after I left him, he was all for going to one, and of course it was my fault once again that we couldn't save the relationship. My therapist never said a bad word about him, not once. His therapist told him all about how I was a horrible person and it was my fault and how he'd offended me. Only once. This woman and her husband were dropped off by her father. He had heard of the quality of our work and figured they could use some help. Most codependent people I've ever seen. Never thought they would stick it through. But last I heard, Beth and Jerry are still together. which is good because on Nuptia4 we pride ourselves on our work. Not a therapist and didn't go to counseling, but one of my good friends did go to couples counseling. His girlfriend was full of insecurities and hate. Just pure hate. She had to know where he was at all times and if missed her phone call or text. Dear Lord, it was a thing. They were going through a good argument one night over the phone and he said something like, "I am not thinking straight, and this conversation is going to lead me toward dying things I can't take back. Let's continue this later." She started yelling and he hung up. She called 75 plus more times and left over 20 voicemails over the course of an hour. He turned his phone off after that. Anyhow, she was a horrible person. They go counseling and after a few visits the counselor says, "I don't think you two respect each other very much and would be happier with other people." My friend's girlfriend lost it on the therapist and stormed out. The therapist tells my friend, "She will always be unreasonable like this. She won't change because she actively chooses not to. It's okay for you to move on." Sadly, he stayed with her much longer than he should have. I went to couples therapy with an ex-girlfriend when she was discovering she only wanted to date men. She wanted to stay besties FWBs but planned to end our relationship. The therapist didn't directly say we couldn't work out, but the questions she asked, for example, would I be okay with just casual sex, certainly guided us toward the irreconcilable differences conclusion. I stopped attending because I felt she wasn't probing my ex's rationale enough. We had other problems I thought she was trying to evade. But my ex hasn't seen a woman since me, so in retrospect the therapist was doing the right thing. A counselor's job is to mediate the couple's discussion, so if one partner clearly wants out, the counselor would rightly steer the discussion in that direction. Not a couples therapist, but I do repair dysfunctions of life and health as a profession and do an extensive amount of life coaching and counseling. In order to do the work that I do and pay the price to be competent at it, I spent my entire life talking to every person in every room, knowing what they do or don't know and understanding when people have insight and not. Contempt is the end of a relationship. When one or both parties have made up their mind to move on in some way, their every action will serve that end. There will be discord without resolution for no reason other than achieving discord each and every day. When people stop seeing the worth in and feeling tenderness towards one another, and when they begin to look for alternatives, the end is near. For people who are in a situation that progresses to ongoing abuse, the end should be now, lest the suffering continue and worsen. Contempt is the end of all things, and no amount of coping or self-improvement will turn their affection again toward you once it sets in. When in at least one party's mind, all further interaction must serve the belief and objective that ending the relationship is the ultimate goal, there is no effort that can be made to recover the relationship. The loss of it will only open greater opportunity for growth and happiness to both. Not a therapist, but my aunt is. She tells me a lot about since I am very interested in her field of work. She never reached to that point yet with any clients of her. However, there's one couple that gave her the hardest time with. Basically their relationship involved crap ton of physical fighting. I'm not talking about physical or verbal abuse. Fighting, like UFC type of fighting. Their house were full of broken furnitures because of their fights. They even almost ready to fight each other during the session despite my aunt sitting there yelling therapist expert languages. Have no idea how she eventually bring that couple normal again. Maybe advise them to switch to WWE? Reading this I realize how lucky I am to be married for approaching 12 years now and we are still extremely happy. A few tips. We waited 7 years to have a child. We traveled the world together. 41 countries so far. We had our honeymoon phase with little stress and experience the world and new cultures. We had our daughter and we're completely prepared. We still travel with her too. Kids will adapt. People said, "Oh, you're jet setting all over the world." Well, now nope. My daughter is 4 and has been to 12 countries so far and driven across Europe 3 times with us. Don't change who you are when kids come. And don't have a bunch of kids. Why? The world is populated enough and it will only make life harder. I never let my job as a police officer get taken home. My wife was not married to my job like many cop wives are. We see so many that love the fact that their husband is a cop and only hang out with other cop wives. They blab about cop wife crap on FB etc. Have your own life. It's a tough job being a cop wife, but don't take it too seriously. Make time for each other. Have date nights and try new things together. I'm just lucky. My wife and I are that couple that is really happy. My parents went to therapy before they divorced. The therapist talked to my mom separately and told her your husband is a textbook narcissist. Get out now. My mom tried to salvage their marriage and my dad continued being opposed and divorced her. She totally owned him in the divorce, though. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.